We live in a world deeply interconnected by finance, and today we'll delve into the precarious balance between debt and stability. Exploring the growing mountain of global debt, we'll uncover the risks it poses to our financial systems and discuss strategies for preventing catastrophic defaults while still fostering economic growth. Stay tuned and stay safe.
All right, so we're doing a deep dive today, and looks like we've got a pretty big stack of reports here
Yeah.
about global debt.
We've got the IMF,
Oh, yeah?
World Bank,
Yep, those are in there.
analyses, even some first-hand accounts.
Oh, wow. Okay, so first-hand accounts, that's interesting.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure we got a good picture of what was going on.
Right, and get to the bottom of this whole global debt situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it can seem a little scary at first.
Oh, absolutely.
All these numbers and figures.
Yeah, like looking at your bank statement after, you've maybe
Yeah,
overspent a little bit.
definitely. But that's why we're here.
Exactly.
We're going to unpack it all.
Break it down.
Figure out what it means for you.
Yeah, because I think everybody wants to know.
Yeah,
What does this all mean for me?
right. And I think the most fascinating thing about all this is that we're not just talking about abstract numbers here.
Okay.
We're talking about real people,
Okay,
real lives.
right.
Global debt has reached a record $315 trillion.
Wow. Okay, that's a big number.
It is a big number. To put it in perspective, that's like every person on Earth owing roughly $40,000.
$40,000
Yeah.
per person. Okay, so now we're talking real money.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not just governments,
Yeah.
it's corporations, it's everyday people like you and me.
Wow. Okay, so that image of like $40,000 per person,
Yeah.
that's a pretty scary thought. But is debt always a bad thing?
Right. That's a good question.
I mean, haven't countries always borrowed money to invest in, things like infrastructure
Of course.
to grow their economies?
Absolutely. You're right. Debt can be a tool for growth.
Yeah.
But like any tool, it can be misused.
Okay.
The alarm bells start ringing when debt becomes unsustainable.
Okay, so what does that mean, unsustainable?
Think of it like this. If your income can barely cover your credit card payments,
Oh.
you're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
It's the same for countries.
Okay.
When their debt to GDP ratio gets
Right.
too high, it triggers a whole cascade of problems.
Okay, so like a domino effect.
Ex-
Okay, so what happens when a country can't pay its debts?
Right.
We've seen the headlines.
Yeah.
Places like Sri Lanka, Ghana.
Right.
Defaulting, is that the cascade?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Defaulting on debt is kind of like declaring bankruptcy.
Okay.
It damages a country's creditworthiness, makes it much harder.
Oh, so they can't borrow money anymore?
It's more expensive to borrow money in the future.
Oh, I see.
And this can lead to a vicious cycle.
Okay.
Higher interest rates, slower economic growth, and even potentially social unrest
Wow.
because governments are forced to cut spending on essential services.
So it's like everything's connected.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a domino effect.
It's all interconnected.
One thing leads to another.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there any warning signs?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, can we see this coming?
The IMF has been raising concerns about a widening gap
Okay.
between economic uncertainty and low financial volatility.
Okay. That sounds a little complicated. What does that even mean?
It's like a pressure cooker, Everything seems calm on the surface, but the underlying risks are bubbling away.
Okay.
And this disconnect, especially with such high levels of debt,
Right.
makes the system vulnerable to sudden shocks.
So it's not just about the amount of debt, but the stability of the whole system.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's like we're building a house on a shaky foundation.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Okay, so what can we do to prevent a full-blown crisis?
Well, there are strategies in place,
Yeah.
but they require this careful balance between addressing immediate concerns
Right.
and promoting long-term stability.
Gotcha.
One approach is debt restructuring.
Okay, what's it?
Think of it like renegotiating the terms of your mortgage.
Okay.
Initiatives like the G20 Common Framework aim to provide relief
Okay.
for heavily indebted countries
Right.
by extending repayment deadlines or reducing interest rates.
Okay, that sounds promising.
It does.
But we hear a lot about the limitations of these frameworks.
Yeah.
Like what makes them so difficult to actually put into practice.
One major hurdle is getting private creditors on board.
Okay.
You see, a significant portion of debt is now held by private lenders. like investment funds and banks.
Right.
And convincing them to accept losses or renegotiate terms can be really difficult.
So they don't want to lose money.
Of course not.
Okay.
Everyone has their own interests and motivations.
It's like a giant game of financial Jenga.
Yeah,
Like you pull out the wrong piece,
right.
The whole thing collapses.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that can be done?
Well, there are some other ideas being explored.
Okay, like what?
What about these debt for climate swaps we've been hearing about?
Oh, yeah, those sound really interesting.
They do.
Are they like a realistic solution?
They're an interesting idea.
Okay.
The basic premise is that a country's debt is forgiven.
Okay.
In exchange for investments in environmental projects.
Oh, so they're basically investing in the planet instead of paying back the debt?
Exactly. It's a win-win, in theory. The debtor nation gets debt relief and can invest in a sustainable future, while creditors can claim they're contributing to climate action.
Right. Everybody wins.
Exactly.
Okay. It sounds almost too good to be true.
It does.
Are there any examples of this actually working?
Yeah, there are, actually.
Oh, really?
Barbados is a great example.
Okay.
They issued something called blue bonds,
Okay, I've heard of those.
where investors essentially swap debt for conservation funding.
Oh, wow.
The money raised is being used to protect their marine ecosystems.
So they're protecting their oceans
Yeah,
with this money.
And that, in turn, supports their tourism industry
Oh, wow.
and strengthens their resilience to climate change.
Oh, so it's like a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Addressing the debt can actually lead to positive outcomes in other areas.
Exactly.
But can this really be scaled up to tackle this global debt crisis?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
It's still early days for these types of initiatives, and there are certainly challenges, but they offer a glimmer of hope and a potential pathway towards a more sustainable financial future.
That's what we need.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about the risks of high debt,
Mm-hmm.
default scenarios, some potential solutions.
Mm-hmm.
But what does this all mean for everyday people?
Right.
How does global debt impact someone living in, say, Vietnam, Indonesia?
That's where it gets real. Think of a small business owner in Vietnam trying to get a loan to expand their business.
Right.
If global interest rates are rising because of debt concerns, they're going to face higher borrowing costs, which could make it harder for them to invest and create jobs.
Wow. So something happening on a global scale can have a direct impact on somebody's livelihood thousands of miles away.
It's all connected.
Are there other ways this debt burden kind of trickles down to individuals?
Yeah, absolutely. Inflation is a big one.
Okay.
If a government is struggling with debt, they might print more money to try and stimulate the economy.
Okay.
But this can devalue their currency, leading to higher prices for imported goods.
So that family in Indonesia is now paying more for basic necessities.
Exactly. Things like food and fuel.
So it's like a hidden tax.
It is.
That everybody ends up paying.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay. It sounds like managing debt and fostering economic growth is like walking a tightrope.
It is a delicate balancing act.
How do governments even begin to navigate this?
It's a tough challenge, no doubt.
Yeah.
They need to find that sweet spot between spending on essential services like healthcare and education, while also keeping their debt under control.
Right.
Too much austerity can stifle growth and lead to social unrest.
Right.
But unchecked borrowing can lead to those disastrous consequences we talked about earlier.
Right, those domino effects.
Exactly.
So it's about finding a sustainable path.
It is.
That avoids those extremes.
Yeah, finding that balance.
Are there any examples of countries that have successfully managed to reduce their debt and get their economies back on track?
There are. Actually, we can learn a lot from looking at historical examples.
Okay.
The U.S., after World War II, for instance, had a massive debt burden.
Really?
But through strategic investments in infrastructure, education, and technology, they managed to turn things around and usher in an era of unprecedented economic growth.
Wow. Okay, so they basically invested their way out of debt.
You could say that.
Okay. Are there any more recent success stories?
Yeah.
Perhaps closer to home, say in Southeast Asia?
Rwanda's journey is quite remarkable.
Okay, I've heard a little bit about this.
They managed to significantly reduce their debt to GDP ratio by implementing sound economic policies, focusing on targeted investments, and promoting good governance.
So it's not just about the money, it's about how you manage it.
Exactly.
Okay.
They've become a model for other developing countries looking to escape the debt trap.
That's encouraging.
It is.
It sounds like there is hope even amidst these daunting challenges.
There is.
But it's going to require careful planning.
Yeah.
Innovative solutions.
Absolutely.
And perhaps most importantly, learning from both the successes and failures of the past.
You got it.
We'll be right back after a quick break to delve deeper into this fascinating and complex world of global debt.
You know, it's interesting you brought up Rwanda.
Yeah.
Their approach to debt reduction highlights something really important.
Oh, what's that?
Tailoring solutions to specific contexts.
Okay, so what works for one country
Exactly.
might not work for another.
You got it. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here.
That makes sense. Every country has its own unique set of challenges and opportunities.
Exactly.
But with this global debt crisis looming, are there any kind of universal lessons we can learn from past experiences?
Absolutely. Both good and bad.
One key takeaway is transparency and accountability.
Okay.
Remember those hidden debts we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah. The ones that are like kind of lurking in the shadows? Exactly. They can be a ticking time bomb.
Uh-oh.
Governments need to be upfront about their financial obligations.
So no more hiding.
Both public and private.
Okay.
So that investors and citizens alike have a clear understanding of the risks involved.
So everybody knows what's going on.
Exactly.
Transparency.
Transparency is key.
Got it.
And speaking of understanding, another crucial lesson is educating the public about debt and its implications.
Okay, so financial literacy.
Financial literacy is key.
So people understand how it works.
Exactly. When people understand how debt works, they can make more informed decisions.
Okay.
And hold their leaders accountable for responsible fiscal policies.
So it's not just about governments and institutions figuring this out.
Right.
We all have a role to play.
We do.
In building a more sustainable financial future.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to those real-world examples you wanted to explore.
Oh, yeah. Those were fascinating.
You sent over some really interesting case studies.
Yes. Kenya, for instance, has been grappling with a debt crisis.
Yeah. Kenya's a tough situation.
They've been trying to implement austerity measures to appease the IMF.
Right.
But it's led to social unrest and protests.
Yeah. It's a classic example of that delicate balancing act governments face. On one hand, they need to demonstrate fiscal responsibility to avoid default and maintain access to international markets. On the other hand, drastic cuts to public spending can have devastating consequences
for
people's lives, especially the most vulnerable.
So it's like they're caught between a rock and a hard place.
They are. It's a tough spot to be in.
Are there any alternatives to these harsh austerity measures?
That's where those innovative solutions we discussed earlier come into play.
Okay.
Debt for climate swaps, for example, offer a way to address both debt sustainability and environmental challenges.
At the same time.
Simultaneously killing two birds with one stone.
We talked about Barbados. Are there any other examples of this approach being used successfully?
Yeah, there are the Seychelles.
Okay, where are they?
A small island nation in the Indian Ocean.
Okay.
They struck a deal with the Nature Conservancy to buy back a portion of their national debt at a discount.
Oh, wow.
The money saved is being used to fund marine conservation and climate adaptation projects.
So they're taking this debt and turning it into something positive.
Exactly. It's a creative way to turn a debt burden into an investment in a more sustainable future.
That's incredible. So debt can actually be a catalyst for positive change.
It can.
If it's managed strategically.
If it's managed well, absolutely.
But what about those countries that are already in a full-blown debt crisis?
Yeah.
Is there any way out for them?
It's certainly a lot more challenging.
Yeah.
But not impossible.
Okay.
Sri Lanka, for example,
Right.
defaulted on its debt in 2022.
Yeah, we saw that in the headlines.
They're now working with the IMF and other creditors on a restructuring plan that involves some painful reforms and austerity measures.
Okay.
It's going to be a long and difficult road to recovery.
Yeah.
But they're taking steps in the right direction.
Okay, so at least they're trying.
They are.
It's a stark reminder that there are real consequences.
There are.
To unsustainable debt level.
Absolutely.
Are there any lessons we can learn from Sri Lanka's experience?
Yeah, one key takeaway is the importance of diversifying an economy.
Okay.
Sri Lanka was heavily reliant on tourism.
Okay, right, I remember that.
Which made them extremely vulnerable to external shocks, like the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Building a more resilient economy with multiple sources of income can help cushion the blow when unexpected events occur.
That makes sense. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
If that basket falls, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
But diversification takes time, investment, and a lot of strategic planning.
It does. It's not a quick fix.
No.
But it's essential for long-term stability.
Okay.
And it's not just about economic diversification.
Okay. What else?
We also need to think about financial diversification.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if a country relies too heavily on one type of financing,
Okay.
like short-term loans from foreign investors,
Yeah.
they become more susceptible to sudden shifts in market sentiment.
So if investors get spooked,
Exactly.
they pull their money out,
They pull their money out quickly,
leaving countries in trouble.
leaving countries scrambling to fill the gap.
It's like that bond market volatility we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
When investors get nervous, things can go south pretty quickly.
They can.
So diversifying their sources of funding, attracting long-term investments,
Right.
developing local capital markets can help mitigate those risks.
Exactly. It's about building a more robust, shock-resistant financial system.
So it's about building a system that can weather the storm.
Exactly.
But let's bring this back to the individual level for a moment. How can someone living in Southeast Asia navigate this complex world of global debt and financial uncertainty?
That's a great question, and it's one we should all be asking ourselves, regardless of where we live.
Okay.
The first step is awareness.
Okay.
Stay informed about global economic trends
Right.
and how they might impact your local economy.
So reading the news, following financial experts.
Exactly.
Maybe even listening to insightful podcasts like this one.
Exactly. The more you understand, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions about your personal finances.
Okay, so awareness is key. What else can individuals do to protect themselves?
Diversification is a good strategy.
Okay.
Not just for countries, but for individuals as well.
Quick.
Don't put all your savings in one place.
Right. Spread it around.
Consider investing in a mix of assets, like stocks, bonds, real estate.
So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Spread the risk.
Okay. What about debt itself?
Yeah.
Should people be avoiding it altogether?
Not necessarily. Debt can be a useful tool, as we discussed earlier.
Right.
But it's crucial to use it responsibly.
Okay, so don't take on more than you can handle.
Don't take on more debt than you can comfortably manage.
Right.
Shop around for the best interest rates.
Okay.
Make sure you have a plan for paying it back.
So it's about being mindful of your own financial health.
Exactly.
Just as countries need to be mindful of their fiscal health.
Precisely. And just like countries can benefit from expert advice and support, individuals can too.
Oh, okay.
Don't be afraid to seek guidance from financial advisors or counselors.
Right. So get some help.
Exactly. They can help you develop a personalized financial plan.
So it's like having a financial coach in your corner.
Exactly.
Helping you navigate all the ups and downs.
Absolutely. And remember, even amidst this complex and often daunting world of global debt, there are things you can do to protect yourself and build a more secure financial future.
That's a reassuring thought.
It is.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of this crisis.
Absolutely.
But it's empowering to know that we're not powerless.
We're not. We have agency.
We can do something.
We can.
Absolutely. And remember, we're all in this together.
We are.
Global challenges require global solutions.
They do.
By staying informed, making responsible choices, and advocating for sound policies,
absolutely,
we can work towards a more stable and equitable financial future.
For everyone.
For everyone. That's a powerful message. We'll be back in a moment to wrap up this deep dive into the world of global debt and explore some final thoughts on what the future might hold. We've learned a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
About global debt.
Yeah.
The impact it has.
It's a big issue.
On individuals.
Yeah.
Economies around the world.
Around the world.
It can feel overwhelming at times.
It can.
But you've also highlighted some really encouraging examples.
There are.
Of countries turning things around.
Right. It's not all doom and gloom.
So what do you think the future holds for us
right.
as we navigate this debt-laden landscape?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
But what we can do is look at emerging trends, potential tipping points that might shape the financial landscape.
Okay, so what's on the horizon?
Yeah. What should we be keeping an eye on?
What should we be looking out for?
One major factor is the rising cost of borrowing.
Okay, interest rates.
Interest rates are climbing globally.
Yeah, we've seen that.
And this makes it more expensive for everyone.
Okay.
Governments, businesses, individuals.
All right, everybody.
To service their debts.
Right, so it costs more to actually pay back.
Exactly.
What you owe.
And this could lead to a slowdown in economic growth.
Okay.
Potentially trigger more defaults down the line.
So it's like this squeeze is happening.
Yeah, you could say that.
On a global scale.
Yeah, a global squeeze.
What else is adding to this pressure?
Well, geopolitical tensions are playing a significant role.
Right. We've got a lot going on in the world right now.
We do conflicts like the one in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Disrupt supply chains, fuel inflation, and make investors nervous.
Right. Nobody likes uncertainty.
No, they don't.
So this uncertainty can lead to capital flight.
Yeah.
Especially from
emerging markets.
Okay.
Making it even harder
for those
countries to manage their debt.
It seems like we've got a perfect storm brewing here.
It does feel that way sometimes.
Rising interest rates.
Yeah.
Geopolitical instability.
Yeah.
And, of course, the ongoing impacts of climate change.
Yeah. Climate change is a big one.
How does climate change factor into this whole debt equation?
Well, climate change is a debt multiplier.
Okay, what does that mean?
Extreme weather events.
Right.
Floods, droughts, wildfires.
Yeah.
They cause billions of dollars in damage.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't even thought about that.
Forcing governments to borrow more money
to clean up the mess
for disaster relief and reconstruction.
So it's like adding fuel to the fire.
It is.
And we're already seeing this play out in vulnerable countries, right?
Absolutely. Small island nations like the Maldives, for example, are facing an existential threat from rising sea levels.
Yeah, they're literally disappearing.
They're having to take on more debt to build seawalls and relocate communities.
Even though they're not the ones causing climate change.
It's a tragic injustice.
It is, and it highlights the need for more financial support.
Yes.
From wealthier nations to help vulnerable countries adapt to climate change.
Adapt and mitigate.
Mitigate its impacts.
We need a more equitable, sustainable approach to global finance.
Okay, so things like debt for climate swaps, green bonds, climate resilience funds.
Those are all good ideas.
Are they gaining enough traction to make a real difference?
It's a work in progress.
Okay.
There's definitely growing momentum.
Okay.
But we need to see more concrete action from governments, international institutions, private investors.
Everybody needs to be on board.
Everybody needs to be on board.
The challenge is to shift the financial system away from short-term profit motives towards long-term sustainability.
Long-term thinking.
Yeah. What can our listeners do to contribute to this shift?
Well, first and foremost, stay informed.
Okay.
Engage in conversations about these issues.
So talk about it.
Talk about it. The more people understand the complexities of global debt, its interconnectedness with climate change, social justice, economic inequality.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
The more pressure we can put on those in power
to
make responsible decisions.
Use your voice.
So it's about using our voices and our choices.
Absolutely.
To push for a more sustainable and equitable future.
That's what we need.
Are there any specific actions individuals can take?
Sure. Support organizations working on debt relief and sustainable development.
Okay.
Invest in companies committed to environmental and social responsibility.
Okay, so put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. And advocate for policies that promote financial transparency and accountability.
So hold our leaders accountable.
Hold them accountable.
Okay. It sounds like we all have a role to play in shaping a more resilient and just financial system.
We do.
Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah.
As they navigate this complex.
Yeah, it's a complex world out there.
An ever-evolving world of global debt.
The key takeaway is this: knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. I like that.
The more you understand about global debt and its implications, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions about your personal finances, your investments, and your engagement in the political process.
So be informed and get involved.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and demand solutions that benefit both people and the planet.
That's a great note to end on. Thank you for guiding us through this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
Into the world of global debt.
A fascinating topic.
It's been a fascinating and thought-provoking journey. To our listeners, we hope this conversation has empowered you to navigate the complexities of this issue and to play an active role in shaping a more sustainable and equitable financial future for all.